Hi, welcome to the very first episode of 5 Minutes with Matty. The marketing team actually wanted to call it 5 Minute Matty, but I thought that'd be a little problematic. If I prepared for longer than that, it wouldn't be as fun and it'd end up being 2 hours. Number one thing that's on my mind this week is I think everything involving Tornado Cash is super interesting. I am a big student of tech history. I like to read a lot of Tim Wu and things like that. And so this is really reminiscent of the fight that we had over cryptography about 20 years ago when the United States government tried to take the actual algorithm behind certain types of cryptography illegal, and it was a big legal war for a period of time with the EFF versus the United States government, things like that. And ultimately, we all kind of concluded that you were free and clear to publish code, that you couldn't make the code itself illegal. And now it seems like we're going back on that. So that seems very problematic to me. Plus, as we know, according to the figures, if I recall correctly anyway, more than 70% of Tornado Cash's usage is for legitimate purposes. That's a small number, right? 70 is small, or 77 or whatever it is. I think the larger point is it seems super problematic to be able to make algorithms and code illegal. In my view, we need to differentiate between algorithms and code versus application of those things. So that's the number one thing that's on my mind. I think the implications are enormously important for our industry and even above and beyond our industry. Not surprising, but unfortunate to see, for example, GitHub, now owned by Microsoft, the fact that they immediately started torpedoing the GitHub repositories for Tornado Cash and related projects. Second thing is, I think actually this might surprise some of you, but I think it's actually really interesting what's going on at EOS, and I personally want to dive into it more. Here's why I think it's interesting. I think it's no secret that I have not really had a high opinion of this project. A lot of that had to do with the involvement of Block 1. So now essentially the community has effectively kicked them out. Frankly, I need to delve into this more. This is kind of on my list of things to learn more about. I think it's especially interesting in light of Bullish Exchange, which was a SPAC, as I recall, which effectively, in my view, was a kind of financial engineering for Block 1 to be able to extract all of its holdings from sales related to EOS and be able to extract them from the project, which is why it really was one of the most ridiculous projects of 2021 for me. And as we've seen, it has gone nowhere. So we have Block 1, and they're trying to be a continuing pattern of extractive behavior. And now what's interesting to me is that the community has now pushed back so hard on this that they have divorced themselves from Block 1. So I have that on my list of things to follow. Next thing, I think we all can agree to take a minute to laugh at the first metaverse efforts from Facebook. I refuse to call them Meta. I think that's fair game. I have a hard time understanding what they're doing. Facebook has had one enormously successful pivot in the company's history, and that was their move to mobile. But I think if you look at Facebook's history, anything above and beyond their initial product, with the exception of their mobile pivot, they've had to buy it. They've had to just buy the innovation, for example, Instagram. This is really the second big pivot from internal in the company's history, and mobile was enormously successful, but early efforts from Facebook's metaverse innovation, not promising to say the least. Of course, we're all talking about the ETH merge, but frankly, even normies know what that is at this point. So I think it's not useful to continue to expand on that. Obviously, we're super excited about FTX revenue. CNBC has reported it, so it's okay to talk about the fact that it was up year over year, 1,000%. Obviously, we're thrilled about that. The FDIC cease and desist letter to FTX US. I have mixed feelings on this one. As our industry matures, we're going to have to be increasingly cognizant about the implications of our communications, including on Twitter. I thought the letter and taking the tweet down, I think that's fair. I think that the implications and innuendos that the communication was somehow purposeful, I think that's unfair, and that's inconsistent with anything that I know about Brett, CEO of FTX US. I thought that was super unfair. Takedown request, I thought it was fair. Jump Crypto is moving big into overhauling Solana, as they put it, in terms of open source validator called FireDancer that they're building in C++. So we continue to see enormously important TradFi names. And Jump Crypto is not a household name because their origins are a trading shop, notoriously not public-facing types of companies, right? It's not Goldman Sachs, it's a trading company. So they're not a household name, but among people that know, it's an enormously important TradFi property. So as we know, they have continued to move deeper into our industry, and now they're working very extensively in Solana, continuing to, but this is the next step, building out open source validator in C++ with their FireDancer project. Going back to Tornado Cash, I do try to be fair. I was enormously pleased to see Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase, his comments that if they were asked to censor, I guess it was their staking properties, that they would just close that business. So I was really happy about that. I think that was a leadership statement from Brian. I try to be fair, right? Celsius continues to get messier day after day, and that'll probably continue for some time. Turning to VC as a whole, rather than specific to our industry, there was some pretty big news with A16Z's biggest investment ever, $350 million to Adam Neumann. I would say this, I think Adam Neumann is world-class at raising money. I don't think it'll age well. I have pretty strong feelings about this one. I think he's a hell of a salesperson. It's probably literally true that he has incinerated more money than anyone else in the history of venture capital. I'd have to fact check that. He's at least top 3, right? Probably number 1 in terms of an entrepreneur losing money for investors. He did not lose his seed investors' money, blah, blah, blah. It was mostly SoftBanks. But nonetheless, he probably holds the world record for that. It's okay to fail, but the way that he failed was very toxic, in my opinion. He left a lot of people holding the bag, such as not just his investors, but his employees. I'm not super thrilled to see that a person who failed, I would say dishonorably, now has raised $350 million. I could probably go on about that at length. Those are some of the things that are on my mind this week. And thanks for listening to the first episode of 5 Minutes with Matty.